Well, hello out there, everybody, and welcome back to the channel right here on Port Royal Pop. Another edition of the After Party, starting a new series because The Mandalorian Season 3 dropped tonight on Disney Plus, and the first episode is out, meaning that I've watched it and it's time to get into the After Party discussion. Open spoilers, so if you haven't seen episode 1 yet, do yourself a favor and go and watch it. It's over on Disney Plus, available right now. All 30 minutes of it. All right, let's get started right into it. I guess there's a few things I want to get out of the way off the bat before we get right into the discussion. And that is this. Unfortunately, what shows like The Last of Us has done, it has gotten us used to these big, long, hour-long episodes of shows. And then we've now come back to The Mandalorian on Disney Plus, and we get 30 minutes. 30 frickin' minutes of screen time for this show. And it's just like, why do these episodes, why do they have to be 30 friggin' minutes long? You could make a great episode up to an hour mark with the content that you have, the Mandalorian, everything involved in the Mandalorian universe. You could easily make a 1 hour long episode, but I have no friggin' idea what the idiots at Disney are doing, making these 30-minute episodes. It's absolutely bizarre to think about. So blink, you start the episode, blink, and it's finished. I mean, I loved every minute, and I was so hyped coming back into The Mandalorian for season 3, and I was counting down the days. It felt like a game day, and yeah, the for what we got for it, despite the runtime, as I enjoyed it. I think there are a few issues I have at the moment, and that it's early days. It's only the first episode of the season, and there's some things that stuck out to me. Number one is, and this is for viewers who I don't fit into this category, but there are some people out there who have not seen the Book of Boba Fett, who chose to, for one reason or another, either skip over the Book of Boba Fett or started the Book of Boba Fett and fell off it because it was not what they were expecting for a show called The Book of Boba Fett. And for one reason or another, they didn't finish it or got through it. Which brings me to one issue I have, is that, and I have to, actually, I have to just double check it. I'm going to put the recap on just in the screen next to me and just glance over it as I'm talking. But the biggest issue that I have with what they've done is that they've just breezed over everything that's happened in terms of Grogu and Luke. At the end of season 2, you see Luke takes Mandalorian away to train him to become a Jedi. For the start of this season, it's not going to play because I've got capture card installed. That's okay. The start of this season, it's as if nothing has ever happened, and that's the biggest issue I have with this beginning of this. Well, it's not just this; it's just the way that they've sorted things out over at Disney, at Lucasfilm, in that they have added this whole storyline, this whole chapter of Mandalorian in the middle of the Book of Boba Fett. And if you haven't seen the Book of Boba Fett, if you're a fan of the Mandalorian season 1 and season 2, and you skipped over Book of Boba Fett because it's something maybe not for you, or you maybe watched that and you didn't finish it and didn't get to the episode where Luke and Grogu are training, then you're going to get to the start of this episode and be like, wait a minute, what? I thought Grogu was with Luke. So there's absolutely zero mention of this sort of side quest, if you call it side quest, if I can use a video game term, to the whole Baby Yoda, Luke Skywalker in the Book of Boba Fett. Absolutely no mention. It's like nobody bats an eye that that's even happened. And if you were to do a binge season of Mandalorian, watching back-to-back episodes, and by the way, the way that the episodes are structured is that they're all chaptered. So the end of season 2 was chapter 16 called The Rescue, and the start of this one is chapter 17. So there's no middle ground there. So if you were to watch a full season binge session, if you're new to The Mandalorian, and that's the other thing, like, there are people who are going to pick up The Mandalorian for the first time at some point, and they're going to binge the first 2 seasons. Then they're going to get to season 3, and they'll get... Look, honestly, I can't remember if there was those shots in the flashback. There has to have been shots in the flashback, but I don't think there was, and I think they just focus exclusively on Mandalorian stuff. But there are things in the continuation of it that you're going to be like, well, wait a minute, he left with Luke last episode, and it was last episode, and all of a sudden he's popping his head up inside the starfighter with Mando now. Like, that to me is something that I don't think is done very well. I don't think the fact that you have to watch another property or another show to continue this storyline, I don't like that, and that's one of the negatives for me. It was just so weird to have this mid-season story, and it's called Return of the Mandalorian, in the middle of Book of Boba Fett. Plus the whole thing with Baby Yoda and Luke training in the Book of Boba Fett. It just perplexes me, like, why did they even do that? And you know what would have worked a little bit better? Is if they had a one-off special, Disney Plus special, that just focused on that whole Luke and Grogu training thing on that planet. If they had one little bridging TV special, like Disney Plus special, that bridged the gap, that wasn't just smack bang in the middle of another character's season, that would have been a little bit better than what they've... Actually, would have been way better than what they've done. Because like I said, this whole Baby Yoda and Luke thing was just smack bang in the middle of the Book of Boba Fett, that it was a bit jarring to... at first when it even happened. But the fact that you need to watch that to understand what's happening here, big mistake. So if it was just a TV special on its own, I don't know what it would have been called. Maybe, I don't know, Luke and Grogu. Just call it Luke and Grogu, a Lucasfilm special. Like, similar to how, like, what Marvel Studios did with the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special, bridging the gap between what's happened with the Guardians in the last movie and where they are now. Having a special such as that would have made the situation a little bit more bearable. Okay, with that out of the way, I really liked the episode. It brought us back to that Mandalorian feel. It brought us back to the Mandalorian and this whole Star Wars world. That's just so fun. And the set design of the show is absolutely phenomenal. I'm introduced to characters again, and there is one scene that we're going to talk about just a little bit here and what it means, what the scene means, because when I seen it at first, and this is the scene I'm talking about, is when they're in hyperspace, when Mando and Baby Yoda are in hyperspace and Mando's sleeping in the cockpit. We see these shadows in the lightspeed aura, or the blue sort of the blue lightspeed effect. But we see these shadows, which is something we have never seen before in Star Wars. We see these shadows because lightspeed in Star Wars has always been a mode of transport. It's always got from A to B, nothing else. And for them to focus so much on lightspeed this time, and you can see these big shadows in it, I really like that. I want to, I was trying to look really to think, what is this? What is this? Does this mean anything? And that's the thing that's got us going. Does this mean anything? Are these visions? Is this a result of Baby Yoda's training with Luke? That he's having these visions of Force-sensitive beings, or hyperspace is something created out of the Force, which we don't like. We take hyperspace for granted in Star Wars. It's a mode of transport. From everything that and I'm a Star Wars fan, the expanded universe, apart from video games, I never really got right into. But that's all non-canon right now. But I don't know if they've from what I've seen, I don't know if they've ever focused so much on lightspeed before in the hyperspace area that we see these shadows and we start to wonder what they are. So what are they? I don't know what they are. If I was to guess, I would say yes, that is a result of Baby Yoda's growing connection with the Force and and we're seeing these visions of Force-sensitive beings, way too big to be people. They're massive, like whale-like things. And I think that they're just visions of these Force-sensitive beings. I don't know if it was... We'll probably see it again in future episodes when they're in hyperspace. We'll definitely see it again. But what they mean, I don't know right now. But I just thought it was a cool moment. One of the other questions that was answered in this episode was about the character that Gina played. Oh, the name is absolutely gone out of my brain right now. But there was a few questions going into the season, so if you've been following what's happening, Cara Dune. If you've been following what's happened, obviously Gina Carano was let go from the role as Cara Dune because of comments that she made, and she was warned and she didn't stop making these comments, so they had to let her go, which is fair. I mean, the comments she was making were, anyway, they were not right for somebody in her position, or for anybody to be saying, to be honest. So they had to let her go, and there was this big question as to what would happen with Cara Dune. And there was a few things going around that they're either going to recast her or they're just going to move on and not even mention her moving on, just whole WWE and Chris Benoit type thing. Just don't even mention her. Well, we got that question answered in the form of a little conversation that Mando has when he returns back to the planet from the first, and we'll talk about that next because that was another thing I want to touch on. The comment that he made was he was asking about all these different people, and he asks who did he ask? he asked Tim Meadows' character, I think. No? Not him. Grief. Carl Weathers. Oh my goodness, I just had an absolute blank. Carl Weathers' character. He turns him and says, "Oh, what about Kara or June?" I think he says, and she says that she has been reassigned somewhere and pushed somewhere in the outer room or something. Comes up with something to explain why she's not here and she's gone far away and can't come back. It was just a throwaway line that answered the question, similar to what they did with Captain Marvel in Spider-Man Far From Home, when he asked and Samuel Jackson said off-world. And it was that similar to that, just one little line, and that was that, moving on. So going back to the planet from the first season, where IG was killed, and seeing the way how far that they've come, IG-11 was killed, and seeing how far they came from rebuilding after all the destruction. It's a functioning society now. It looks really clean. They're attracting all these people from around the galaxy to come, including the little critters. I don't know what the name of them are, but we saw Babu Frick in Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, so his little race are also in there, and that was a funny scene when Mando is needing IG-11 sort of put back together, which I sort of had a little problem with. I think we may be crossing over into the problem that Marvel has, in that they're now talking about bringing back a character that made a heroic sacrifice to save them, and then they've built this using his parts. They built the statue in honor of him, but Mando just comes along and says, "Well, he's still got his that's still him inside, right? Like, we can just rebuild him." And then they're just like, "Oh yeah, let's just give it a try. Let's see if we can do that." And Mando goes off and tries to rebuild him. That's one thing I have a problem with. I think, and by the way, they didn't. And if you've seen it now, so you know that they don't succeed at the moment. But IG-11 made this heroic sacrifice to his demise at the end of season 1, that having him brought back would probably diminish that moment. And to be honest, it's like, you just raise the question like, well, okay, why didn't they just think of that back then? Oh, they got this droid here. Why couldn't they just, in the time that's passed, just try to rebuild him? They had the parts with him. Why did it have to wait until Mando came back and gave them that idea? Why couldn't they just try it back then when it happened? And that's one of the things I had a problem with. And I just don't like the idea of bringing back characters that sacrifice themselves in that way, that, you know, that have that legacy for them when they meet their demise in such a heroic fashion, that I just think bringing them back is just a bit of a cop-out, to be honest, unfortunately. So I had a bit of issue that they didn't get it done, but you know that the little Babu Frick critters, they're going to fix him. They are going to fix him. They're going to work on him, and they're the magic fixing droids now. All of a sudden, you got these little tiny critters, after showing up in the Rise of Skywalker, that these guys are the best droid repairers in the galaxy. Where were they when 3PO was blown apart? Why weren't they employed by the Trade Federation back during those times to build their, help rebuild all their battle droids and all of that? So I have a little issue with that, but that's fine. I liked the little critters, and I liked the scene when Grogu, who at this point is the smallest character in the show, but he has this nice little moment where he um, it actually stands over these small little characters, which I thought was really, really cool. Some of the other things that I liked is we sort of get a sense of direction now where we're going with the season, and we sort of got that idea in the trailer, but we now know that the season is going to be, well, the way it's looking right now is that it is aiming towards the whole battle for Mandalore, sorry. The battle to taking back Mandalore. We see Mando wanting to get involved now, and he goes and visits Bo-Katan, who, by the way, that castle, that Mandalorian castle that we see at the end of the episode, was something out of Game of Thrones. It looked good. It was so something that we have sort of seen but haven't seen in Star Wars, and I can't wait to see more live action Mandalorian culture, Mandalorian lore, Mandalore itself. That wasn't Mandalore. That this castle, and there's the castle there. Look at that. I absolutely love that, and they got that big throne at the end of the room. Don't know if it's a throne room because it looks very narrow to be like a big throne room, but it is. And there's Bo-Katan sitting on the throne. I like the ending, and then obviously it just ends after this scene. Which, like I said, I absolutely fucking hate that. I hate the runtime of The Mandalorian. I mean, this show itself deserves to be at least an hour long. And why they can't do that, I will never understand. But yeah, there's a few moments there from the episode that I liked. I really liked the interactions that Mando had with Grief. I liked the whole Mandalore setup that we're gonna explore the taking back of Mandalore in this season. I liked the new look of the town, and I don't remember the name of the town. That he visits, and it's rebuilt now to look, it's a functioning town once again, which I thought was really, really cool. I liked the interactions that the little Babu Frick critters had. I liked, the the episode itself, not bad, but some of the things, like I said, the whale, the Force vision, so to speak, in hyperspace, is something that hope, I hope they touch on more in the season episodes to come, because I want to know more about what that is, and what, if something to do with the Force, is it a vision that Grogu is seeing, and is it a result of his training? So I can't wait to see if they touch on that some more, moving forward. But yeah, I did have issues with it. I mean, the whole thing about, and it's not just with this episode, the issue I have about the whole Luke Skywalker, Grogu, Book of Boba Fett thing. That's just an issue for Star Wars on Disney Plus in general. But then the rebuilding of IG-11, why couldn't they just do it when he had a sacrifice back then? Just have an issue with that a little bit. But overall, good episode. Can't wait to see where it goes from here. And the big question is that we're getting this season. Are we going to see who rescued Grogu from the Jedi Temple? So, projecting forward, I've got a few options here. This episode was all about setting up Mando and the Mandalore situation, taking back of Mandalore. There was no, apart from the hyperspace scene, there was no real indication as to what we're going to get from Grogu this season. The big question this season, and I believe it has been confirmed that whoever saved Grogu from the Jedi Temple during Order 66 will be revealed in this episode, in this season. But that will probably come later down the track. If we go off anything about the last 2 seasons, there's going to be 8 episodes in it, so there's plenty of time for them to touch on that. But 8 30-minute episodes, I mean, come on, guys. 1 hour episodes, Disney, please. Alright, guys. That is going to do it for the episode 1 Mandalorian After Party. I enjoyed it. I had my issues with it, but I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more of the season. It's probably, look, The Last of Us, I think, has taken the mantle as my favorite TV streaming show. Mandalorian is a hot, close second. I loved season 1 and 2. I was so hyped for season 3 to start. Now that it's here, it's surreal. And by the way, that's the one thing I didn't mention at the start of the show, but we'll finish off with that. This is the week of Pedro Pascal. We had the Last of Us, albeit it was an episode centered around Joel this week, which I think that actually ironically ties up well. We had an episode which was centered around Ellie this week on The Last of Us, and then we get The Mandalorian, which is centered around Mando and Pedro Pascal. So I think that was ironic that worked out like that. But next week is going to be the week of Pedro Pascal, because we should have Joel back on the screen properly next week on The Last of Us, and then we're going to have episode 2 of The Mandalorian. And I think the next maybe 2 or 3 weeks we'll have the crossover with The Last of Us wrapping up its last few episodes, and then Mandalorian going from there. So we'll have, for the next couple of weeks at least, 2 episodes of After Party going up. I'll try to do it back-to-back, like what we're doing tonight. But definitely looking forward to seeing how this goes. This is the age of Pedro Pascal. This is Pedro Pascal's world. We're just living in it. All right, guys. Question is for you. Jump down to the comments below and let me know what you thought of the Mandalorian After Party. And let's get a discussion going around that. What are you looking forward to? And what are some of your highlights from episode 1? And what are your thoughts in general about that whole thing in hyperspace? I thought that was cool. And I'll be interested to see what everybody's theory about that is. All right. Thanks for watching tonight's Mandalorian After Party episode 1. And if you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell to stay up to date for when our next upload is right here on Port Royal Pop. It is goodbye for now.